Let me just turn
Good
this
morning.
towards
It's still
you.
morning. Thank you, Heidi. Heidi asked me to do this months ago, and it was I was here 5 years ago. I think it was like 2018, 2017, and it was weird because last year I thought, if Heidi asked me to come back to Moms, I don't know what I'd talk about. I don't know why that ran in my head once. like I'd assume that you want me to come talk to Moms. And then you did ask me. I think it was like
You are back by popular demand.
Well, thank you.
Several people approached me and said that we should have you back. And I was like, I just want to say, I was nervous because I know you have a lot going on in this life. I'm not just sitting around looking for something.
Clearly I am because I was thinking about it. Where can I talk?
I texted and she was like, yes. And I was like, what?
Yeah. I think I was thinking it because I had just been in a season feeling so out of it. Wow, if I had to talk, I have nothing to say. I feel very uninspired, very uninspiring. I don't know what God's doing with my life right now, and I don't know what I'd say. And then Heidi asked, and I just had this little spark of, yes, I'll speak. I didn't know what to talk about actually because I'm kind of in limbo. I'm 40, almost 43 now. And I definitely in the midlife crisis stage of I have the bangs to prove it. Because I've never had bangs my whole life. Never. And I'm teaching high school right now. And I do a little bit of middle school too. And late September, I was like, wow, I feel so old now. You should see the kids in my class. I teach just part-time. So I'll go to the high school after I'm here, actually. That's why I'm wearing black. It's not very springy, but I have to look professional. My class is a lovely group of only 7 kids. There's 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders. They're kids who hate reading and writing, and it's really hard for them. And sometimes I'm like, wow, writing, capitalizing the first word of the sentence is hard for them. And so that's where we're at. And I love them so much, but I love interacting with them. I'm learning a lot of new words, like Riz and Rizzler. Do you know those words? Cap. That's cap. That means you're lying. Yeah. A Rizzler is someone who has a charm effect, oh, they're such a Rizzler, the ladies are drawn to them. I think I'm learning a lot more than they're actually learning from me. And I come home and I use these words with my voice. Well, I haven't talked about I have children. They're old now. And they're like, oh my goodness, Mom. I can never say Riz again. So I thought, yes. So they make me feel very old, my class, even though I feel young. But they're they refer to, let's see, I'll talk about Mrs. Cope, when did you graduate from high school? I was 1998. They're oh my goodness, back in the 1900s? Basically, I have to tell them every 2 weeks how old I am. So how old are you? So anyway, it's really fun. So anyway, yes, I have 3 boys. You'll see a picture of them when they're little and now older. My oldest is 16. He's a sophomore in the high school. I have a 14-year-old boy, 8th grade. Actually, I'll say their names. Alex is a sophomore. Hudson is in 8th grade. And then Jonas is a 6th grader. And it just does all go very fast. But I'm not saying that in a sad way. It's all very wonderful, and I actually love all of it. So I thought about doing a talk on life in the middle, because I'm a middle daughter of 3 girls. I'm in the middle of my middle ages with my bangs that I'm now trying to grow out because I wish I didn't cut them. I was trying to cover up my tired eyes and that little thing that's happening between the middle of my forehead. I was bangs will help this, but I forgot that I'm someone who never blow dries my hair. And I have this really wonky, frizzy, all over the place. I blow dried it this morning, but you cannot cut bangs if you don't blow dry your hair and your hair does not go naturally straight. It doesn't work out. So it's been a lot of work, me and the blow dryer every morning. So yes, but I thought I'm not going to do a talk on the life in the middle because I'm still in it, and I don't really have anything very encouraging yet to say as I'm getting through it. So I'm gonna talk on the things I know best, which is photography and story and being a mom. And my whole life has just been the intersection of those things. When I graduated from college, I had an English degree, and my high school principal asked me to come teach English. I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do. And he said, well, what are you going to do? I was like, work at Clixies. Clixies doesn't exist anymore. But, like, no, I'm not going to work at Clixies. So I went and taught for 4 years. Heidi's brother taught with me. He was a year older. We had gone to school together. He moved from Pennsylvania in middle school. Apparently had a crush on me in middle school, but never told me. I barely even knew Adam in middle school. Knew him a little. Apparently I said hi to him in the hallway once in high school, and he remembers that. So when I came back to teach, he was very excited. He was actually the person that called me when I was at home, and I was like, I don't know if I want to teach at the school I went to. Like, that's really weird. All the teachers that I had are still there. And Adam called me because he had been there for 1 year. He's a year older, and he was telling me I should come do it, and it was great. And I remember my mom saying, he has such a nice voice. He does. It's a very nice, low voice. So I taught for 4 years, and then we got married. And I taught my 4th year, we were married, and I was pregnant very quickly. So our whole marriage has been being parents, mostly. Because I think we'd been married for 4 months when I became pregnant with Alex. And it's just been a joy, and we love being parents, and we love our boys. And I love, like, I know everyone doesn't want their kids to grow up, but I think it's been, like, the greatest joy for me to watch them grow up. And I love where they're at now. They're like they're not my friends. Adam's my friend. My kids I love that we like hanging out together. Alex has been dying. He's my sophomore child. He's been dying to watch The Office. We're pretty like, my kids don't have social media. And also I'm pretty like, no. So I feel like he's old enough, and we've been watching The Office together at night. Like, he lays in bed by me. And Adam and I recently got this geriatric bed that, because we like to watch TV in bed at night, which sounds terrible. We're not like those kind of people. But we like to watch something before we go to bed to laugh a little. So we're having trouble with the pillow situation. And Adam decided we should get the geriatric bed that's pretty cheap. So we have the remote that attaches to the bed. You can, get your legs out, and Alex gets in the bed, and the legs go up, and we watch The Office, and it's just wonderful. And it's super inappropriate and uncomfortable, but I think it's really important to like watch those things with your kids. I notice with my high schoolers, they're just watching Netflix at home in their room, like unlimited. I don't think that's good. Oh my goodness, I haven't even got to what I was going to say. So, let's see. I'll finish later, next year, if I get back. Let's see. So I taught, then I was home with the boys, and like, we don't have a lot of money. My husband teaches at EC. Just a life that we've chosen, and we are just very happy. I know we're in North Jersey, so it feels like the opposite way to live when you're supposed to be making more money and getting a bigger house. And technically our house right now is probably what is a starter house for a lot of people. And we love it, and we just have made it our cozy little home. But so I've been home, and maybe I should have been working, and we'd have a lot more money in our bank account, and I'd have a fancy career, but we don't. I was home with the boys, and I don't regret it at all. Some of you, I guess most of you, are home, and you've made that same choice, and I'm just going to tell you that you're not going to regret it, because money is money, and your kids are only little for a little while. And I totally get those that need to work and all. I'm not putting that down, but it's just a choice that we made that I don't regret at all. So I picked up photography. I've always enjoyed creative endeavors. I like writing. And so I picked up a camera. My husband actually sold his car. We had 2 cars. He sold his so that I could buy my first camera. He picked it out. He's like my tech person who tells me what I need next. And he biked to school. We lived in Prospect Park, and he taught at Eastern Christian High School. So he biked to school for, I don't know, maybe close to a year, so I could have my camera. And I had the minivan with the boys. So I picked up photography and I just did that on the side just to make little bits of money here and there. And I'm still doing it. So that's the thing. I've done it for the last 10 years. But I was finding as the boys are getting older now, most people want their photography work done on the weekends. And when your kids get to my kids' age, like I know some of you would love to go do something on the weekends, like get out of your house and away from your kids. But my kids are gone all week. And they're sporty, athletic boys, so we have all the sports all day. It's wonderful once they're in school because all the sports happens right after school, so you're not doing all that rec stuff. But they're busy all week, and the weekend is the only time I get with them. So I am very selfish with my time with them, and it's hard for me to give up my weekends now to do photography. So I started teaching a little bit back at school, so I could provide a little bit more and be more on track with their schedule. And I still do a little bit more photography. And that life in limbo, like I don't even know it next year. I don't know if I'll teach, I don't know if I'll do photography. My husband is so kind and generous with me that he says, you don't have to do anything, but then we wouldn't eat. Food is really expensive right now, and I'm telling you boys, I have like 2 boys now with deep voices and hairy legs. I think the cult gene is like, they hit puberty early, and like, they're hairy. So it's very strange to have like 2 hairy children in your home with low voices, Stella knows. And they eat so much, and my oldest is a runner. He loves running, and he's fast, and it's so fun. But he eats so much, and like spring track started, he'd been running all year because he does cross country, and then he does winter track, now he does spring track. I guess he thought those 2 weeks when he wasn't running were like time off. And so spring track started, he's like, Mom, I can really feel my appetite revving up again. No, they eat so much food. And I know it's hard for you because like you kids that are picky and they won't eat, and that's so stressful, but someday you're gonna be on the other end. If you have boys and they're just gonna eat. Anyway, so I'm just trying to provide food. That's basically what I do is I work so that we can eat. And I pay for a couple other things as I can. So how do I go there? How do I go? Anyway. So I decided to talk about photography a little bit, motherhood a little bit, and then a little faith connection for each. So I'm just going to focus on like 4 overall things. And the first one, a lesson I've learned from photography, and maybe it's just a little bit how I was built, but it was, that's me and the boys a long, long time ago. And you'll see a picture of them when they're older now, but this is probably what your kids, well, yours are even younger because I see a lot of babies here. But yeah, that's me and the boys probably 10 years ago. Jonas is 12, so it was probably 10 years ago. And there were I look at that now and I think of like all the things I was stressed about. Jonas was like really struggling to talk. If you have boys, it's so normal for them to take a long time to talk. None of mine talked till like 2, and every time it was so stressful when they turned 2. It's like, do they need more intervention? Alex and Hudson moved along without it. Jonas really had a struggle. So like that was just like that hard season. And it's so weird now because he's in 6th grade and he loves writing and like none of that. So maybe it's helpful for you to hear that like those things that feel so hard and heavy right now, like having the speech therapist come to my house and hearing it, and I just like cry, like, oh my goodness, he can't even say an E sound. Everything's so hard. And you would never know it now. Okay. I'm gonna skip that. Okay, so the first thing, lesson from photography and just motherhood, is paying attention. And there's so many things vying for our attention, and we want to like distract ourselves with so many things. But I'm so thankful for photography in my life because, first of all, photography is all about light. And I'm just I'm always watching the light, and that might sound like the dorkiest thing ever. But like, if you pay attention to just the light in your home, it's such a beautiful, like, quieting study, like just noticing like the way the light is hitting something in your house, or like the way the light is hitting your child's eyelashes, or the way it changes through the day. Like, and even as we get towards spring, when the sun is coming up a little bit earlier, paying attention to the sunrise and the sunset, which I haven't been as good about lately. I used to like have the practice of like, I'm gonna watch the sky for when the sun rises, at least look at it, or when the sun sets. And I shared that with the boys because that's fun, because they'll be like, Mom, you have to look outside at the sky. So sharing those things you notice with your kids so that they become noticers too. I think kids are naturally like good at noticing things, and as adults we become kind of crappy at it. That's not a good English teacher word. I don't know any of the cool words that kids use these days for crappy, but just slowing down. And I'm just thankful for photography for giving me that. Even if I wasn't taking a picture of something, I'm just always looking for the light, because when I'm doing a shoot, I'm always looking for pretty light, or something that's gonna make the image look better. In motherhood, paying attention. It's so hard to say this because we have such a culture with the phones. It's so hard these days, but I'm seeing the high schoolers so addicted to their phones, and it's just sad. We have to model better. Like, we have to do better with our phones. Being present, I think we're so worried about capturing everything, and it's really important. It's really, like, I'm a photographer, so I really think it's important to capture things. But if we're not ever present and all we're doing is taking a picture and video, and our kid sees us doing that all day and we're posting, I think we're missing stuff, even though we think we're like gaining in doing that. And again, there's balance. Like, that's really important. It is really important to capture, but I think we're a little too much doing that, maybe. And I asked the high schoolers about their screen time, and I mean, they're like on TikTok for, I won't tell you what one of the kids said. Like, he checked his screen time. I think one day it was 20 hours. I was like, when did you sleep? It must have been a weekend. I don't know. And they're like, I know it's so bad, but like, my grandmother says something, but she's on her phone just as much. So we have to model for our kids. Like, this is their life. This is their childhood. I think if they see all the adults walking around looking at a phone all the time, they're like thinking that's what life is. And we have to do better somehow. We can't be spending so much time in other people's stories that we are not living our own story, that we're not like in our kids' stories. And again, I don't mean that to like guilt. I have to do it. I have to like check myself all the time too, because it's so easier, like just to find ways to put the phone away. But now I've actually become the opposite, where I'm like actually kind of sad that I've missed I haven't taken a lot of photographs of my children. So just finding that moderation being important. I think I took that because I included this, because sometimes we'll walk. We live in Pompton Lakes. I can't remember if it was Plains. We live in Pompton Lakes. We move a lot. We've moved every 3 years. This is the longest. I think we're just over 3 years. We don't love moving, but like I said, we live on a limited budget, so sometimes we just have to like make the next move for something that works. So we've lived in things with like 800 square feet, and we lived in a beautiful farmhouse in Pennsylvania for 3 years that like makes no sense compared to the rest of our lives. But anyway, sometimes we like, actually this is old. This is an old picture because I can tell two of the boys are taller than Adam right now. Alex is 6'2" and Hudson's 6'1". So this is old. But we like to walk over the bridge and watch the sunset sometimes. So like just getting outside with your kids and helping them to enjoy and appreciate the things around them. Oh, I thought I had a quote there, but I don't.
You probably do. It's just low, so you probably can't see it because of the screen.
Oh, I thought I had a whole slide of it.
It's at the bottom. Yeah. If you look on your computer screen, sorry. I don't know.
Oh no, it's like a whole slide with just words on it. Oh, yes. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna read this. I took a little photography thing in the early winter, and the person I took it with included this quote. What I'm saying is that I think life is staggering, and we all just get used to it. We are all just used to it. We are all like spoiled children, no longer impressed with the gifts we were given. It's just another sunset, just another storm moving over the mountains, just another child being born, just another funeral. If I have a hope, it's that God sat over the dark nothing and wrote you and me specifically into the story and put us in with the sunset and the rainstorm, as though to say, enjoy your place in my story. The beauty of it is that you matter and you can create within it even as I have created you. I just really enjoyed that. We're like surrounded by this staggering beauty and we're not noticing it or like allowing ourselves to be in it. So now I have to go back. Okay. Another thing with photography is viewfinding, like finding your perspective. That's something that's helped me in my life in general, something I think about as a photographer. So as a photographer, obviously, you're telling someone's story. The story, you zoom in and you zoom out, right? Like I wouldn't give someone a whole gallery of images that's like, just the same crop of the face, like the same distance away. Like you want to zoom in and get little details. You want to zoom out and get the whole setting. And think, just constantly changing between those two things to see the whole story and to capture the story. So we need to do that in life too. I find like sometimes the big picture is overwhelming, right? Like there's a lot going on, or there's a lot going on in the world right now. And sometimes we just need to zoom in and look for something beautiful that's close. Something we hadn't been paying attention to because we're being so overwhelmed by the big picture. Other times we need to zoom out because little things going on feel so overwhelming that we kind of need to step back and be like, okay, it's okay because there's a bigger story here. One of these things, okay, so let me show you the boys. Okay, so there's the boys more like whatever your kids' ages are now. They look so little. And this is actually the boys right before Christmas. I think Hudson's grown in other instances, and his hair is like several inches longer. I did not know that sometimes in puberty, kids' hair can get really curly. So Hudson's always had this like wavy hair. And when he turned 13, suddenly now he's these like crazy ringlets. Anyway, so the perspective of your kids grow. And I was thinking about when Alex was little. My kids are all pretty close in age. Alex was maybe 3.5 when Jonas, my youngest, was born. So it was 3.5, almost 2, and a newborn. But when it was just Alex for a little bit, he was a quiet, serious kid. Like Heidi has a good story about taking Alex to Chuck E. Cheese, thinking like, this is so fun. Was it for his birthday, like a birthday present or Christmas?
I think you were away for the weekend. But this,
Oh,
this was the first grandson. It was our first nephew. We were so excited, like we had a chance to be with Alex for the weekend. And my sister and I were taking to Chuck E. Cheese's.
He's gonna love it.
Like 30 minutes in, he's like, this place is so annoying.
He's probably 3, yeah. He was like this quiet, serious, deep thinking kid, but so wonderful. Like as a firstborn, he was like the perfect little firstborn boy, just like so sweet. And I remember joining MOPS actually for him because I thought like, oh my goodness, we lived in Newark at the time. Like I said, we've lived different places. So we lived in Newark because we were part of a church plant there when Alex and Hudson were little. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're not socialized because we live in this 3rd floor apartment. And you guys are bombarded with podcasts and all these voices in your head telling you what you're supposed to do as a mother. I'm like, my kid is not socialized. And look at him. He's like so serious and laying on the ground, just like doing this with Matchbox cars, like lining them up. I call it just meticulous and just deep thinking. And I remember going to MOPS just so he could like be with other kids. I'd go to these like moms play groups in Newark that I found, and I'd just be watching like, oh no, he's not interacting with any of the other kids. And I was really panicking, like I am a terrible mother for this child. I don't know what I did. And now like the perspective of Alex, like it's so him. And why was I fighting against like his sweet little design where he's like so deep thinking and thoughtful and kind? I'm gonna start crying because that's like, you learn so much from your kids, how they are, and they teach you and you grow with them. And I've learned so much from Alex. Like I think he's more mature than me and has such a perspective that's so thoughtful. Like if you have boys and you're fearful of like having teenage boys someday, what it'll be like, Alex wanted me to take him for Christmas to buy some Christmas gifts for his friends. Like he got little mugs. I don't know. They were, he's into like typical, a little bit dorky things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. And so he got some of that stuff. And then he was up really late that night, and I was annoyed, like, oh, I sound so, you're supposed to be in bed, there's school tomorrow. And I wake up in the morning, and I see he's like horribly wrapped these little mugs, like so much paper, so much tape. And he had written a note for each of these friends about why he was thankful that they were friends with him. And this was like a sophomore in high school boy. So like, I guess that's the perspective part. Like when you look at your kids and you feel like they're supposed to be a certain way, they probably are the way they're supposed to be. And if you can, the sooner you can see that in them, I'm not saying we shouldn't train our children. Some children are not the way they should be in many ways. And my husband and I are very like pro-discipline, like raise your kids to say things. The things they're not going to naturally say. I have high schoolers who I bring food for all the time. They love being fed. And most of them will not say thank you. And I'm like, ooh, you know, like, kids need to be trained, but there are certain things in your kids that like you just need to, that's the paying attention, like recognize those things in your kids and nurture it. And it's probably going to be a lot of who they are later on. I don't know. Let's see. Another perspective thing. I was thinking back to 2017 and 2018 when I was here, because I was also teaching that year. We had just moved back from Pennsylvania. I was a wreck. A lot of people may have known I was a wreck, but I was such a wreck. I was crying every night. So I was teaching and overwhelmed and photographing and doing weddings and trying to like adjust to being back in New Jersey. And it was a horrible year. And I was seeing a therapist and I was literally crying every night. My husband's like, I don't know what to do for you, because he doesn't do well with crying. And I cry a lot. I'm a very emotional artist type. But he's the perfect husband for me. He's like the steadiest person ever. Like he's such a solid rock. He's like home for me. And I'm unsteady, so that's good. But anyway, I was thinking back to that year and how horrible it felt. And I look at the things that happened that year. I'm like, the most amazing things happened that year. And like the most fruit in my life grew that year, like more. And I'm a little jealous of that year. And I would never want to do it again. But this is all to say with the perspective that like whatever feels really horrible, that maybe in a few years you can look back and be like, maybe there was, because I was so tender in that time, that God was actually like planting seeds and there was so much fruit in that season. I think of relationships I had with students that year. I mean, I cried in front of my class several times that year. I was teaching honors level English class, humanity, so it was like co-taught with an English history teacher. It was really cool. I felt so inadequate, and I hadn't taught for years for those kids, and I was just honest with them a lot, and I cried. But you know, I have relationships with those kids. I look back on photos I took that year, and I was like, there was a lot of beauty that happened, and I never would have picked that. So another perspective thing. I've loved listening to Ellie Holcomb's song Sweet Ever After lately. I've been blasting it. I actually listened to it probably 4 times this morning in the shower and on my way here. And if you want a like uplifting song to remind yourself that the story has a good ending, if you need to hear that. I think she wrote this song about the tornado ripping through Nashville. But just a reminder to herself during that scary time that like the story has a sweet ending at the end, that God is a good and faithful God in the end. All right, I'm not totally following my plan, and I might have talked too long already.
You're good.
Okay. The next lesson. Oh, this is a really weird picture. I meant to change it out, but the other one was too big, and then I forgot that I was going to change it. So anyway, the importance of being yourself. I got a card from my aunt when I was little. I remember it said, I wasn't little, actually, it was just college. my littler former self. It was a card that said, be yourself, everyone else is already taken. And I always kept that card because I was like, that's so helpful. Like, why would I want to be anyone? Why should I try and be exhausted trying to be other people when I'm just myself? In photography, that's easy to do because you enter the photography world and you're like, what do people want from me? Like, oh, they want photos that look like that person's, or this is the trends and I have to do the trends. There's trends I've regretted that weren't me. And I've done photography for 10 years. I feel like it's taken me this long to get to a point where I'm finally taking pictures that feel like the vision I've had all along. And of course, I'm still frustrated because when you do creative work, you never feel like it's good enough. But this part took me way too long to be myself as a photographer and to trust my own vision. In motherhood, this kind of gets back to what I was saying before, that we get to be firsthand witnesses to our children becoming who God made them to be. We help shape them, but we also just have to pay close attention to God's work in them and his unique design in each of them. And I guess I like the word essence because like a lot of things about your kid change, but they're like, there's an essence in there that's like always there. So I talked about Alex being deep thinking, gentle, thoughtful, very mature. Then I have Hudson. They're all so different, and Hudson's complete opposite from Alex, maybe. Not in bad ways. I'm not saying he's immature. He just loves outdoors. He's always been really playful. He's always been super content to just like be himself and do his own little thing. Right now, we live in, like I said, Pumpton Lakes, and we live across the street from where the Cannonball Trail starts. So Alex, as the runner, goes and explores all those trails. It's very scary to send your kids off into the woods, but he does this all the time, and I just have to be okay with it. And he runs over to the Ramapo Lake by Skyline, and he explores. Hudson, across the street, someone has created like a dirt trail thing with jumps, and he takes his little wheelbarrow, goes through our neighbor's yard, who loves it. He's an older, tired man who loves the boys like walking through their yard. They have to get to the woods. And he takes his wheelbarrow and his rake, and he works on his trails for hours with his work gloves. He'll bring the wheelbarrow back, and then he'll come back and he's like, Mom, I'm going to go take my bike over. And then he goes and bikes. And that is also terrifying because I've seen what he does over there. And I do not want to be over there with him all the time. But it keeps me praying because I'm like, just please don't smash your head open. And anyway, you're not worrying about these things yet. And then I have Jonas, who's like just super silly and like just so sweet. But the funny thing with him is he's like so timid at school and everyone's like, no one thinks he talks. And he comes home and he's like the most chatterboxy kid and just sweet. He's like my little, cuddly boy. So just thinking about the essence of our children. So anyway, I was going to read you this little letter. I actually wrote it for my boys, but maybe listening to it is something that you'll connect to with your own kids. I wrote this a couple years ago. Dear boys, I remember holding you as babies and studying you, wondering what seeds God had planted into your tiny little bodies to slowly germinate, sprout, and blossom over time. There are a few that pushed through the surface quickly, small nuances that gave peeks into your unique you-ness. There were physical traits that were immediately seen and noted. The adorable cowlick in the dark hair that framed Alex's handsome newborn face. Still there, he probably hates it. The sweet brown eyes that always seemed to hold a glimmer of Hudson's smile in them, and the dimple that punctuates all of Jonas's big smiles. Within the first few years, we admired Alex's studious eyes and wise comments, Hudson's quiet busyness and endearing contentment, and Jonas's quick laughter that invites others in. Growth continued to expose rhythms and reflections of who you all are inside. Now that you are all at least a decade old, I love looking back at old pictures or revisiting snippets that I wrote down about your younger years. My heart almost feels like it is going to explode when I realize that so much of who you are now was inside of you way back then, revealing yourself in dozens of tiny little ways, blossoming into the still growing boys that you are today. There are things in you that shine, interests that light up your countenance, and skills that flow out of you naturally. Being a student of you, my dear boys, has been such a gift to me, a project for my creativity, a passion of my heart, and I truly believe one of my deepest callings. How can I take care of something that I am not deeply familiar with? How can I nudge you a little closer to imaging God in your own ways without paying attention to the facets of his grace and goodness that I see reflected in you? Is it strange that in some ways my calling is to help you find your calling? Along with the tender voice of your Creator leading you, you will surely have other helpers along the way, but I was the first person to hold you as you grew within me. You were a part of me, while also very much your own little being. Being a mother is very much like being a gardener, tending, nourishing, weeding, creating environments of growth, helping you weather challenging conditions, encouraging and rejoicing in growth, and celebrating all the beauty. There's still so much growth that will continue to stretch and mold you. I don't think that it will ever fully end, and yet there will always be your essence deep within, the wonderfully unique individual that God has made you to be, with facets that reflect your Creator in ways that only you can. So what is your calling in this world that glimmers with hope and love, but also shrugs under the weight of darkness and pain? This is still a question I have to ask for myself each morning, and I don't always fully know the answer. But these things I know: stand in the light by being in His Word, reflect the light through all the many delicate facets that He's created within you. He loves you and has called you into partnership in His good work in this world. Maybe that those words I wrote to the boys are something that you also feel with your own kids. I've always enjoyed, I always feel like I'm a student of light as a photographer, and as a mother, you're like a student of your children. I've always enjoyed being a student. I was like sad when school ended, but now I'm like a student of my children, and I think it's a really fun and interesting study. Okay, I'm gonna go to the last. Oh. All right, and the last thing for being a photographer mother is, and maybe this goes back to my vision for my own photography, is finding the beauty in the ordinary and the mundane. And connected to that, living with all five senses. Like, we live in such a screened world these days, and maybe that also comes back to the paying attention and noticing, using our five senses. In regard to finding beauty in the ordinary, I like using photography just as an act of gratitude. I don't always take the picture, but again, maybe that comes to like walking around your house and noticing light, but just like seeing like the beauty and like setting. Well, I have older children. I know, like, setting the table. I'm a dork that like sets the table in the morning. This is a new routine, but I set the table in the morning so that I don't have to do it later. And I like to make dinner nice because, like I said, my kids are older. This is not like something that probably connects to your current situation. But because our dinner time is the most important time and we're all together, I set the table. We use cloth napkins. I light candles. My high schoolers laugh. I think this is the dorkiest, but sometimes I put on like French cooking music or like, I don't know. I like to have good music on, and it's not even like we're eating fancy meals all the time. But and I know I'm like raising boys, so you think they don't care about candlelight and like French cooking music on in the background. But I think it matters because I'm trying to create like a dinner time that's pleasing to our senses, and that's our time together. And that's me. That's also like, you also, not only do you like learn your children, but you also share who you are with your children. If you just hold all that back and they never know you as like all the little things you do that they don't know about. So that's the way I share beauty with my hairy, hungry boys who eat and barely talk because they're just clearly shoveling music down, but it's all in beautiful ambiance. And so that's just, I know, kind of random, but I like creating a home that feels cozy and beautiful because that's where we spend all of our time. And faith-wise, I always think of the verse, taste and see that the Lord is good, with like that, using, God created a sensory-filled world, and that's how He reveals Himself to us, or it's like a gift that we get to receive in like enjoying all of our five senses. And that's something I want my boys to enjoy, even though they're boys. That's still something that's important and good. And we spend almost all of our life in the ordinary, mundane. So why not pay attention to it, or why not make it a little bit more beautiful? I'm not a big moment person, I guess. I realize, like, you know, there's some women that like dream about their wedding day forever and ever, and they have everything all picked out. I wasn't that person. Like, my wedding day was lovely, but it's not like probably not my favorite day ever. Like, I don't really like being in the spotlight, so being a bride and having attention all day wasn't really the best. And I love the moments that my boys are born, but it's like my everyday that I have the most time in my life with. So that's what I want to most focus on, and not like just dream about and wish for the next big moment, but just enjoy this moment that I do have. All right, and to close, have I talked forever?
You're good.
Okay. I have this quote by Friedrich. I looked it up in Buechner. I said it to my husband. He's like, "Are you sure that's how you're supposed to say it?" And I said, "Yes." I looked it up. This quote by my kitchen sink, right there. I don't always read it, but it's there. It says, "One life on this earth is all we get, whether it is enough or not enough. And the obvious conclusion would seem to be, at the very least, we are fools if we do not live it as fully and bravely and beautifully as we can." And I love those three words. And I don't always do those things. I don't always feel like I'm living my day fully. And I don't mean fully like fill it up with all kinds of things. I just mean fully, like really present, really in it, bravely and beautifully. And like I said, I don't do those every day, but it's something that I want to strive to do. Even in the 2017 and 2018, where I'm crying every night, that there's still going to be beauty there. So. Thank you so much, Kate. You have some things to. Oh yeah, I do. Oh yeah. Okay. I wanted to bring some. I turned 43 in 2 weeks. I like giving things away for my birthday, which is kind of funny. Last year I don't think I did, and my kids now know that about me because Jonas said to me last year, he's like, "Mom, what are you going to give away for your birthday?" So I was glad he thinks of that as like a thing I do. Anyway, so this will be my early giveaways. So I have 4 things. I was trying to connect them to like my 4 points, but no. It wasn't totally working out. I was getting forceful. So this is one. I have this string of pearls plant hanging in my living room window. I love it. It's so easy to take care of. And anyone who's good at propagating plants, I'm not sure how you do it, but this is all ready for somebody. I don't know how we want to give these away. So I have the little.
So, should we do that?
Sure. Oh, did I just read the whole
Yeah,
one?
read the whole thing.
301-449.
Oh, that's me.
You can give us a sign if you're not a plant person.
Awesome.
Okay, then this will have to be a little bit of an IOU because I didn't have time to get these printed before today. But for noticing, maybe this is part of the noticing. I have printed in the past tons of these little like spring flower things, all these little squares. And they're nice to just stick up or like write a little note or verse or something encouraging and throw it in the mailbox to somebody. So I'm going to print like 10 of these different little things and get it to whoever wins this. And I can give you a little something in the meantime. 301-461.
So you can get the address.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or I can give it to you. I can get it from you. Oh wait, this one. All right, so there'll be a whole set, but not that size. But you can have that too.
All right, we'll get I'll share your information.
Okay. And then maybe this is the being yourself part. And I love Advent. So a couple years ago, I made it my Advent project to every day, like focus on a word. And some of you might have already seen this or have it. But it's just little like Advent readings for each day of Advent. And so I just have a picture that has to do with the word for that day. So I'll give one of these to 301-461. Oh, that's the same number.
Is that? Oh, okay, oops. I can do one, sorry. All right, here we go.
301-450.
All right.
And then this is super random. Now, this I brought because, like I said, I don't have a big fancy house, so I just like to create little nooks that make me happy. So this spring, I bought a couple herb things, and they're sitting in my window. And they make me so happy when I see them, and they smell so good. So I think this connects to like the senses. You smell the rosemary. I always have rosemary and lemon diffusing in my house too. So 301-457, kind of this little rosemary. I know it's not big or exciting, but I like sweet little something.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I believe
Well, we have like 10 minutes, so I'm going to hand out some papers that you can discuss at your tables. To wrap it up. All right.
No, yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. It was just sorry. Oh no, no problem. I know. So that is the that's the pearl. Where's the